Hey everybody, Shawn here from the Automation Blog and School, and this week on the Automation Podcast, I meet up with Kristen Kosatka from Rockwell Automation to learn all about the new features coming to Studio 5000 version 35. But before we get to that, I have a special announcement. I've just released my very first book. It's an ebook and it's entitled Logix Book of Knowledge. What I did is I combined all my Control Logix articles from the last 10 years into an ebook. I updated them, I added new pictures, and I made it all available for just $9.99. So if you appreciate what I'm doing, if you want to support the show and the channel and the blog, then please check out my brand new ebook, Logix Book of Knowledge, which you can get over at theautomationblog.com/BOK1. With that said, let's jump into the podcast and learn all about what new features are coming in version 35 of Studio 5000.
Kristen, thank you for coming on the Automation Podcast to tell us all about version 35. I'm very excited to learn what's new with this version. I haven't really been following all the developments leading up to this release, so I'm excited to learn about this today. But before we go into that, could you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hey, Shawn, thank you for having me on this podcast. Honestly, it's my first one, so for all the listeners out there, if bear with me as I go through this. But like you said, my name is Kristen Kosatka, and I'm here to talk not only about Studio 5000 and the exciting release we have coming up here shortly, but I also did want to focus more on not only that, but Logix Designer and the different components that are aligned with this upcoming release for Studio 5000 v35. So as you
Excellent.
asked for, I got a really nice slide for you to talk about myself. So a little bit about my background. I am currently the Studio 5000 product manager. As of this past May, I've been with Rockwell for 10 years. So in that time, I've worked for a variety of different roles, starting as an intern in our systems and solutions business, to then going through Rockwell's coveted engineering and training program. After that, and going through the EIT program, I spent the next 5.5 years in our remote support, covering mainly small controllers. But I do have support experience as well in safety controllers, Plant PAX, FactoryTalk UME, Stratic. So needless to say, I have a lot of variety and expertise while at remote support. So that ultimately led me back to the EIT program, where I then became the competency supervisor when it came to the training program. So I was in that role for just about 1.5 years before finally ending up where I am now as the product manager back in December of 2020. All right, so with that, let's get right into it. This is actually a very exciting time for us here in the software realm. I'm going to give a shout out to Dennis Wiley and Justin Wingates, who were just recently on your podcast talking about the history of where we were and where we're going. And if anyone hasn't gotten a chance to listen in on that, I would highly recommend it. That was honestly just a great listen. So expanding on that, I really want to focus today on where we're at currently with the upcoming release of 35. So with 35, there are three main areas of focus for this release, and these are going to include hardware support, as always, feature enhancements, and productivity enhancements. When it comes to the hardware support, I won't go too into this since I'm more on the software side of things, but this is still a very exciting release when it comes to hardware. So with this release, we have the new Flex HA 5000 and GuardLink platforms coming out here soon, as well as enhancements to our tried and true hardware, such as the 1756 EN4TR. For feature enhancements and productivity enhancements, I'll go further into details on these as we go, but we do have additional sequence manager support coming in here, as well as Axis test mode, expansions on the embedded process instructions, component change detection, and replication and manipulation of multiple I/O devices. So this last one here, I do want to say a little bit more on this one before moving forward, just because I do not have a dedicated slide to this. But this is something that's going to simplify and reduce the amount of time it takes to edit your IO tree when it comes to copy, cut, paste. Imagine trying to just start up a new program and you're going to have 20 different drives. So now you can create one and you can copy and paste multiple, so you can create all those new drives at once. There would obviously be a few minor things that you might have to adjust, such as the IP addresses and naming them if you want to change the naming convention. But ultimately, this is going to be a pretty powerful tool when it comes to building out your Logix application. Okay, so first up here on our actual feature set, we have Sequence Manager. So this isn't necessarily new functionality. It's been around for a long time. I honestly remember back when I was in training, this was one of the things we learned, and that was almost 10 years ago. But what's exciting is now in version 35, we are expanding our support for this. When we were looking into expanding the support for Sequence Manager, we really had to take a step back and see where there would be value add for our end users. And it dawned on us. In 2020, we welcomed a new controller group, our process controllers. So being that Sequence Manager is really a process-oriented feature, why don't we just tie it to the P controller? So that's what we did. In v35, Sequence Manager will support the 5x80 P controllers. So these will include the 5580 and 5380 product families, and are denoted with a P after, just to signify out of the box that these are process controllers.
Could you, just for the audience, could you give them just a quick overview of what Sequence Manager is? Because I don't know that a lot of people out there know it. I don't know if it's as popular or widely known as Phase Manager. So could you just just a sentence on what Sequence Manager is?
Honestly, that's a great thing. So pretty much Sequence Manager is the extension of Phase Manager when you're looking at it. You're looking at the different phases. Well, what is the sequence of steps? Think of like a sequential function chart where you're going through the different steps. You're seeing where you are in the application, and you're really going through, and if something happens in your process, this is a very good way of determining what's actually happening. So it's just a way of managing within the software without having to go outside to batch or process within the actual software itself to show that representation. So thank you for having me clarify that. That was a good point.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, no, that's not a problem. But with these controllers, when we're tying it to the Sequence Manager too, out of the box, these controllers are already optimized to follow Plant PAX guidelines. And this is going to tie perfectly with our next product enhancement we have within version 35. Okay, so when we go to this slide, we are actually going to be adding new embedded process instructions in version 35. So in version 33, we originally introduced 25 new process instructions available in the instruction palette in Studio 5000 Logix Designer. And these 25 instructions aligned with the Plant PAX 5.0 distributed control system. So these were very beneficial since they would help reduce the footprint, help with localization when it comes to extended tag properties, Logix-based tag alarms. Moral of the story is it just made using process instructions more simplified and seamless. So now, here 2 releases later, we have this very process-focused release coming out with v35. So in addition to these 25 instructions that were already embedded into Logix Designer, now we're adding 3 new process instructions. These are going to include the D4SD for discrete 2 to 4 state device control and monitoring. This will also include the P and position to control circular or linear discrete devices with 2 to 8 positions, and the P valve MP, which is for mixed proof valves. So this is a really nice thing if you're already familiar with how these things work. Traditionally in the Plant PAX library, they would be an add-on instruction. So this is going to translate directly into the embedded instructions. So there's no need to really have to relearn everything from scratch. Now it just makes it that much more simple that you don't have to import, make sure you're at the latest version, and everything is right there for you.
Now, I just want to clarify, these new instructions will be for the P controllers with version 35, right? These new instructions are not going to be available in the separate plant packs 5.0 that we have to use with non-P controllers. Do I have that correct?
Correct. So the
Okay.
embedded has to be with the P controllers, just like Sequence Manager. And the reason why is just because of the architecture. The non-process controllers don't have the support necessary for these controllers embedded. It would take up that additional memory in the bar. So really, you don't want that in there. If you're going to use a traditional standard controller with Plant PAX, you would still want to use those add-on instructions to get that value.
Yeah, I know. A lot of people have really jumped to the P controllers when they use a lot of the plant packs AOIs because it streamlines the whole process. And if tell me if I'm wrong, it frees up a lot of memory because this is embedded now inside the P controller. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. So
Yeah.
we don't consider those embedded instructions part of your memory. So
Yeah.
when unfortunately, when you're doing it the other way with those traditional standard controllers and the traditional method of the add-on instructions, every single one of those you're adding
Mm.
is memory taken from the controller that could be used for your application. So
Yep.
this really does give you that true value out of the instructions without taking up the real estate within your project.
Excellent.
Hey, awesome. I'm glad I could clarify that for you. But since we're on the topic of new instructions, there is a quick mention I want to do for another instruction that's going to be new to Studio in version 35. All right, new to Logix Designer instruction set in v35 is the ATAN2. Now, please don't make me go back to my math courses. I will try to do my best on this one to do it justice and leave the programming up to the people who know it better than me. But the ATAN2 function fundamentally converts rectangular coordinates, so your x and y, to polar with r and theta. So where r is the distance from the origin and theta is the angle from the x-axis. So in simple layman's terms, this was the best way it was described to me. Ultimately, what this is it gives us a conversion from rectangular to polar coordinates where theta is going to be your angle. So for me, I would have never had to use this, but there are a lot of applications out there that this is going to be really beneficial for. So you're no longer having to build that compute instruction and kind of build your own math instruction. It's already right there for you.
Yeah, I'm getting a feeling that motion control people are going to like this instruction. I don't know why, but yeah, this is. I would love to hear the audience any thoughts on if you would use this instruction and what you would use it for, because nothing is coming into my digital brain about this.
Yeah, but hey, like you said, this is probably going to be huge for the motion realm.
Mm.
Um, but as a transition to like 35, just as a whole, is going to be amazing for motion. So as we transition to the next slide here, we got more exciting news.
Oh,
Yeah, I know, right? So motion is going to be very happy with this release. So one of the most asked for functionality we have seen when it comes to motion is the ability to emulate an axis. So most of us have been in a similar, if not exact situation where you are editing code or adding some new functionality to an already existing and running line. So traditionally for motion, unfortunately, you would have to make sure you're in a safe state to take the line down, which could be frustrating. There was no way to test your motion functionality without using the actual physical hardware. I mean, I guess you could just guess and assume it would work, but obviously that's not best practice. So not only would this be time consuming, but it's potentially very dangerous to do that on live equipment. There's things live on the line that could not be taken into account for. So now with this, we are introducing motion virtualization. And this is going to support both physical and emulated controllers. So this is going to support the 5580 and 5380, both standard and safety for the physical controller side of things. But it is also going to support 5580 controllers, standard and safety, using the upcoming release of FactoryTalk Logix Echo release 2. So this is not only an exciting thing that's happening in the motion space. So let's keep going with this motion theme, because ultimately this is a really big release. So for motion, we're all familiar with your traditional Ethernet IP connected robot control. What I would really like to highlight here in this slide is the support for unified robotic controls. So when you look at these side by side, the benefits of adding this to your portfolio is pretty clear. Studio 5000 can provide direct control to the robot without the need for a robot controller. So this allows the robots to be fully integrated within safety and sensing applications, as well as what an operator would see on an HMI or operator interface. So with Emulate 3D, unified robot control can be simulated and virtualized, but also I want to go back to this for just a second. Without that robot controller. So this truly becomes more modular and scalable. And this really ties into a lot of other values that we have been using, such as ACM, which helps in the background of Emulate 3D and library management. So it really comes back to create the code once, be able to reuse. With that direct Logix control, now it's easier than ever to have reusable control that is fully integrated into the system. All right, now we're going to move out of the motion realm for a little bit and go to those productivity enhancements. So let's take a look at controller change detection. This might be somewhat something that folks aren't familiar with as well, but this is a functionality that has been around for a while, first being introduced in version 20. So there are currently 2 attributes that are supported. And generally, if you're going to be accessing them, you'll be using the traditional SSV. And if you're going to be setting what attribute you want to track, it would be through an SSV. So those would be which changes you would want to detect, and the audit value, which would change if a change was detected. So with version 35, this is now going to also be supported on the 5380 and 5580 controllers. This is a topic that has a lot of information on it available. And honestly, I learned a lot from this programming manual, so I am going to call it out in here too. I would check out the information and status programming manual on this. It provides a lot of examples on how it could be set up and really just gives you a really good head start on what can and cannot be done if controller change detection is something that you would want to use in your application.
Yeah, and I'm just going to repeat that for our audio only listeners. So if you want to know more about this controller change detection support, check out, go to the literature library and check out the information and status programming manual. It's Logix 5000 controllers information and status programming manual. And I'll be checking that too after the podcast to get back up to speed on that. But yeah, it's been out since version 20. So if you're not using it, you may want to check that out.
And Shawn, I'll make sure to get you a copy of that too, and the presentation after this is done. I did embed a link in there for anyone who would want it. So we'll make sure that's covered.
Thank you.
Of course. Okay, now we're going to go to some very riveting things. Shawn, I know you cover version lifecycle management on your podcast, so I promise not to bore everyone with the full explanation, and I will go right to the good part and tell you what you need to know. So following VLM, Rockwell is going to continue moving forward with the most current 3 releases as being fully supported on the PCDC. You will see these as active preferred. At the beginning of 2022, we did have a release of version 34 of Studio. When this happened, active preferred included version 20, 32, 33, and 34. This is still where it currently stands today as we are talking on this podcast. But what I really want to make clear is when 35 is released, even though it's going to be in the same calendar year as when 34 was released, the active preferred versions of software will change on the date of version 35's release. So that shift will include version 32 getting moved to limited on the PCDC. So unless you absolutely need a download for that, you would have to contact remote support to get that version of software as soon as version 35 is released. So if you need it, get it sooner rather than later before that gets moved. As well as changing those active preferred versions to be version 20. And then the shift really goes to 33, 34, and 35. So this will stay as the current version lifecycle management until version 36, so on and so on. So moral of the story on this slide is we would highly encourage following the version lifecycle management preferred version, since with each release, we are making changes that not only fix anomalies, but it adds functionality and just makes the software better. So speaking of better, this is more so as an FYI. AOPs in 35 are going to start looking a little bit different. So this is going to be our first release to support the new Webtech UDC profiles. So what's really cool is it's not just the look that is getting a refresh, but these are modern AOPs that are built on a different system entirely. So now common device configurations can be shared, it can be integrated or standalone, and it can either be on your PC or even a mobile configuration. So it's not necessarily a huge change looking at it, but it does bring a lot of value add to the software, especially, you know, as newer generations are coming up, technology is evolving. We're trying to keep up with the latest and greatest in technology and how you can actually access your programs.
You know, for the people listening, I just, you know, today, you know, when you use an AOP, an add-on profile, you know, you get that kind of same look you used to get when you had add an IO module, you know, just a standard built-in IO module. It used to be a multi-tab dialog box, and they went to the listing on the left to choose what you want to change. And so that now migrates into something that looks more webbish, more colorful, user-friendly, and allows you to change. It looks like all the same things and provides you all the same information about, in this case, an IO module, but it's more of that web look. So for the people who are listening and can't see the screen, you know, I just wanted to explain that and kind of give you an idea of what we're talking about here.
Absolutely. And with that, you know, I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide, especially since there are folks on here who aren't going to necessarily be able to see it. But I do want to highlight that there will be a subset of existing AOPs that will be based around Webtech in this first release. So for version 35. So for those of you who can see it, those IO modules are all to the right. But for those of you who can't see it, just know that the overall support for Webtech UDC AOPs with the version 35 is going to be a subset of 5069, 5094, and 1756 with the initial launch of these profiles. Okay, so 2022 seems to be the year of change for us when it comes to software as a whole. So with that in mind, there have been a few changes when it comes to Logix Designer for OS support as well as testing. So this is something that could impact users if they aren't aware of this change. So I really wanted to make sure to point this out. You have a really nice audience in here to where we can spread the word on this and make sure, you know, no one gets left behind on this. So if you are following version lifecycle management and are currently using a 32-bit operating system or are still on Windows 7, I want to bring awareness to the change that came with version 34 earlier this year. So starting with version 34, Windows 7 and any 32-bit operating system, including Windows 10, is no longer supported. So this was due to security enhancements we made in our services platforms. And just be aware too that all version 34 aligned products will follow this same. So there is some new support coming out and testing that has been introduced to align with our upcoming release of version 35. And this is actually really exciting. So we are now following CIS benchmark testing. And CIS benchmarks from the Center of Internet Security are a set of globally recognized and consensus-driven best practices to help implement and manage cybersecurity defenses. So the world is changing, and Rockwell is trying to stay on top of what we can do to make our software and the applications of our users more secure. So our current CIS benchmark for testing is Windows 10 Enterprise 21H2. And v35 will also be the first software version to support and be tested on Windows 11 at the time of release. Version 34 is supported on Windows 11, but at the time of release, we were not able to fully test it. So just be aware it is supported just at time of release. It did not have that Windows 11 support at that time fully.
That's good to know. Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it's one of those where it's one of those gotchas that in an application that could make or break you. So these are definitely things you want to know moving forward. So all of this is things to consider when you're moving forward with Studio. But let's face it, there are so many other things tied to Studio and that are going to make a successful product. It's not just Studio and Logix Designer. So as we transition forward, we're going to start taking a look at the aligned products. And the first one up is going to be the Logix SDK. Right, so coming out right around the time of release of Studio v35, we will be officially introducing the Studio 5000 Logix Designer SDK. So back in the day, we used a tool called the CLI tool, but it wasn't something that was fully supportable. So this is the next generation of that tool, and we are making an official product so we can fully support those who use it. Technically, we could call this an API, since ultimately what it is C++ scripting to automate some of the UI functions that take time and effort in the background, but we are calling it an SDK because we will be not only, including the tool itself, but we'll be including sample code documentation. It's not just the tool to do your job. You do need Logix Designer installed on your box to use it. This will just be, running in the background through those Logix services. So that's like the one prereq you actually have to have. You actually have to have Studio installed to use it. But the SDK will be included with pro licenses and will work back to version 31.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So like we thought about this ahead of time. Like it's actually very nice. And when we look at this too, we're going through and we're going to connect through FactoryTalk links since that's the latest and greatest in the comm software right now. But most excitingly, this is also going to tie to our emulation, the new generation of emulation software in Logix Echo. So it's not just the physical controllers, it is also the emulated controllers that we'll be able to use this with. Let's do this. I'm just going to click forward a few times for those who can see it. So when we're going through what the SDK should be doing, we really wanted to look at a subset of the functions in the Logix UI that are just tedious and take up a lot of time and steps. So especially if you have to do it multiple times. So lately, we have really been putting a focus on reducing unproductive time in different workflows. So with version 34, it was decreasing the download times. I mean, that's awesome, right? Who doesn't want to decrease the time it takes them to do something? But even with those decreased download times, what if you have to download to not just one controller? What if you have to download to 50 controllers? It's not just the time of the download you have to consider. There's a whole workflow that would have to be gone through for every single controller. Okay, in order to download to one controller, I have to open the project. I have to go through the comms, system comms, and select the path. And that's just if the software is actually ready to see it. You don't get that red X in RS links or FactoryTalk links. So now we see it, we have our path set. So now we have to make sure we download to the controller. We have to make sure it's in program mode before we do that. Then after we download, we have to change it back to run mode. Per controller, this could take 5-10 minutes. So that's not bad on its own. But when you think about 10-50 controllers, over time, and the more controllers you have in your system, all that time adds up fast. So imagine writing a script once and being able to download to all 50 controllers at the exact same time with the click of a button. Yes, it'll still take the time to download, but if you look at all that extra time savings you did from having to do that process every single controller, honestly, I think that's a pretty great time savings. If you look at just 10 controllers, you're saving yourself an hour right there. So what, you're saving yourself 5 hours for 50 controllers. So for this initial release, we will be focusing on a few key workflows, and those are going to include your open, your save, your go online, your controller mode, and upload download. So really that, if you think about it, it's that workflow that we just worked through while describing what the SDK is.
Yeah, I know that a lot of people out there are like, yeah, I would never download all the programs to all my controllers at the same time. Unless you're an OEM and you have a bunch of systems sitting there and you're, testing one, and when it works, you want to deploy it to all 50. That could be an option. But don't forget the upload part, people, because there may be a time where you do want to write a script to upload from several controllers in the field. And uploading is always very safe compared to downloading. Uploading does not disturb your production. So I could definitely see somebody wanting to do something where they could upload all of their controllers and then maybe update the server and whatnot. So definitely, if you're listening and this sounds like something you're interested in, check out this slide. It's number 15, and take a look at this. So let you continue, Kristen. I just wanted to add that.
Oh no, and that was a good transition because now we're moving over to FactoryTalk Logix Echo. So perfect timing for that to get in there. So like I said, we're going to talk about FactoryTalk Logix Echo. So for anyone who is not currently aware, the next generation of emulation software is available today, and we do call it FactoryTalk Logix Echo. With this first release that is currently out now, you can emulate up to 17 controllers at one time and execute an existing project without modification. So this next part is personally one of my favorites, especially coming from support. I wish I would have had this tool back when I was there, just so I wouldn't have to physically change my setup every time someone called in. But this is like, it connects to it emulates the front Ethernet port of a controller. So which means you can do messaging and produce consume between emulated controllers to see how they're actually going to work before you actually put it onto a live line. And with that emulation of that front port, you can also connect to an HMI. So you could truly test at a system level. So it also does have an SDK that's different than the SDK we just talked about. This one is Echo specific and included. You have high data speed, data exchange, virtual time scaling, and can even do some operator training with various simulators as well. So Logix Echo is currently supported with version 33 and above. That is something to be aware of.
And I don't think we said it. So for those listening, this is 5580 controllers. So just want to, if you have 5570s, that's Logix Echo is for 5580 controllers.
You read my mind. You read it. Because here we go. Yeah, it is a no change to the project file required for the 5580 controllers. So this is actually really awesome because, using version 33 plus and above, well, files 33 and above, you can directly emulate to a ControlLogix 5580 without having to do any modifications. So you don't have to do any more project morphing or IO tree manipulating to make sure that the project matches exactly. Instead, you can just focus on the project and solving the real problems that are making a difference in your application. So now that we have a little bit of background on what FactoryTalk Echo is, let's go into the exciting part. Well, at least the exciting part for me, which is what's coming up in release 2. So release 2 of FactoryTalk Logix Echo is coming out around the time of Automation Fair this year, and will be an expansion of the capabilities that were mentioned in the last slide. So there are some very exciting things coming out. You got a sneak peek of it back when we were talking about motion for for Axis test mode. But let's see what other new functionality we'll be adding. So for R2, we will be adding the support for safety controllers as well as having multi-chassis support. So Axis test mode will be supported within the new release of Echo, and we will go more into each of these different features as we continue forward. But we also do have API capabilities and time dashboard controls as well. Right. So when it comes to safety, I know this is a huge topic on everyone's mind when it comes to what's going to be supported. So when it comes to the safety and guard Logix safety support for FactoryTalk Logix Echo R2, all the functionalities introduced in FactoryTalk Logix Echo V1 will apply to guard Logix emulator. So this will also include, just so you have a little bit more of a highlight reel of what else is in the emulation, is virtual SD cards. You can emulate to emulate Ethernet and backplane communications. So that's class 0, class 1, and class 3. You can do services and controller API. So this also includes emulation of both the standard and safety tasks. So you'll be able to use those safety instructions set execution within the safety task, safety add-on instructions. You can do both SIL and SIL 2 and SIL 3 safety are supported with using this. The one thing I would note in here is you're not going to have a true safety partner just because it's not physical hardware. So the safety partner would be mimicked within Echo. But also within the dashboard and API, there is chassis slot reservation for that mimicking of the safety partner, and you can configure those parameters as well. And the nice thing about this too is we all know the pain of having to change a safety signature. So with these projects, when we said you don't have to change anything, we meant it. So when you download your guard Logix program, the signature remains unchanged. So you can truly download a safety application exactly how it would be when you put it on a live system and have that emulated for you with FactoryTalk Logix Echo. So just a reminder, this is with R2 of Echo and firmware version 35 or later, that guard Logix functionality will be supported. So come around Automation Fair and you'll get some good demos of this, I have a feeling.
Now I see a note on here that says in the future, you'll be adding support for the 5380.
Yes, so that's definitely going to be a future release. I cannot state at this time what release that would be in. Just unfortunately, that is not a product that is under my control, so I can't tell you exactly. But yeah, the goal is to add the compact guard Logix in there as well. For the first safety release, it's just the 5580s.
Excellent.
Good catch on that future release. Okay, so continue on with the Logix Echo features. For Echo's multi-chassis architecture, I know this is going to be a question, so I'm just going to answer it now. R1 of Echo has a single chassis, 17 controller support. R2 is multi-chassis and does not have a defined controller support limit. It will vary and depend on the resources of your system. So this flexibility allows for more complex systems to be tested. And to me, what that says is test your system more efficiently and trust more in the work you completed during testing out the gate. So you really can get that complexity that you would see in the real world versus just a simulated environment that's simplified just based off of the ability of the software you're using. In the API, there's not a lot that's changed in there, but I do want to mention we have new client library functionality. So this is going to allow for all controller and program tags to be used. And me being a nerd, this is probably the most exciting thing for me. For your different integer tags, so your synths, your ints, you can actually now go down to the individual bit level. So, for some people that might not necessarily be exciting, but I know for me, being able to tie a Boolean to an integer or a dint for me was a huge deal when you can save that memory by using a dint and just pointing to the individual bits of that tag.
Yeah, years ago, we used to teach people to do that. I mean, going back 15 years, power programming, I mean, that was something we would always recommend, is not to use a scattered booleans, but to create arrays of dints and assign your and use them, assign aliases and whatnot. So that's good. That's good that's what's in there.
Oh yeah, and I can confirm we still teach people to this day to do that. Especially just a Boolean takes up the same amount of memory as a dint does.
Yep.
It's just what it is. So the fact that this wasn't able to be emulated and truly tested, I mean, it seems like a simple thing, but it does make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Okay, and now we're going back to the fun stuff. So we're going right back to access test mode. So this slide I definitely could have had in the access test mode section in the motion, but I wanted to wait until you could see the whole picture, so including FactoryTalk Echo. So as I had said before, for Echo, 5580 standard and safety controllers are supported, but only for the standard task. This is where we are now for when v35 and R2 of Echo are released. So as we move into phase 2 and future releases of access test mode, both the physical and emulated controllers are going to be able to support safety task motion logic. So in the physical controller, the typical SSB will be used to enable the test mode for safe safety drive connections. And for FactoryTalk Echo, the SDK interface will have the read and write motion attributes. So this is forward-looking. I can't speak to exactly when these new phases of access test mode are coming out, but just know that between phase 2 and phase 3, it looks like we have a lot of very exciting things coming up. So hopefully you guys tune in with Shawn and make sure to keep up to date with this as well.
Yeah, so if you're excited about access test mode, just keep in mind standard task motion logic. So just keep that in mind for phase 1. You're not going to be using it in the safety task motion logic, or, and you can come back to this slide if you want a refresher, but that seems like it's going to get, phase 1 is going to get most of the applications, but I do know that safety will be a question you get a lot until phase 2 comes out.
Absolutely. And, as we're trying to release one release per year, you're looking at 36, 37 for these future enhancements. So keep an eye out for those. Okay, so I don't necessarily like using transition slides, but here I think it's very necessary to explain something. So during these presentations, we tend to focus on those big features, the shiny new buzzwords that get people excited, and that tends to fall into the what can Logix Designer do for you? But oftentimes we completely forget about the other things we have to do to get the physical system we spent so much time creating functional. So what are all the other things we need to be doing to make this work and make it more efficient? What about flashing your hardware? What about changing your controller time, whether that's for daylight savings time or just, you had some drift? What about knowing what you actually have in your application? That's where the various tools come in that help us that get overlooked all the time. So we are just going to spend a little bit of time today focusing on tools themselves. So let's start with Control Flash Plus. So this is a very powerful tool, allowing multiple devices to get flashed at once, and it is a definite value add. So from the software, you can get the latest firmware and get more done in less time. So we talked about the download workflow with the Logix SDK, and this is something very similar, in my opinion, when it comes to flashing. So there are steps you have to take in order to flash a controller, and these can take some time. So doing them individually, especially if you have a lot of controllers, is less than ideal. So with Control Flash Plus, up to 20 devices can be flashed at the same time. So there are going to be some limitations to this. So such as the E300 and the PowerFlex. So if you have those in a linear or DLR, those would get flashed sequentially. Certain comms cards, such as like a DNB or ControlNet DeviceNet, those have to be flashed before their children can be updated. So this would also be a limitation. But that being said, what is really nice though is the tool will automatically can automatically figure out the order to flash those devices when they do fall in those exceptions. So Control Flash 5 does have some great value functionality to it, including the ability to inventory your assets or export them to Excel. You can also register your products, extend your warranty, access product documentation, so you don't have to, figure out what you're using, go to the literature library, find the document. It's all right there. But also, I know I keep preaching about VLM, but from this tool, you can also check that product lifestyle to see where your product stands when looking, to do a conversion or just what the longevity of your system is. You can check that all in one place, which is really nice.
Now, I'm going to ask this question. I don't want to steal your thunder if you have it on the next slide. But so I've been using legacy Control Flash, even with my 5370 and my 5570 and my 5380. Is Control Flash Plus, is it included with Studio 5000? Is it something I have to buy? And what does it work with all products, or can you give me an idea of when I would want to make the jump to Control Flash Plus?
Yeah, so a lot of that. So as far as it being included, generally it's just a download from the PCDC.
Okay.
But when we're going in here, I am going to go to the next slide just because this does have a lot in there.
Yep.
But as we're looking at this, really, it just depends, because in no way am I saying that the original Control Flash is obsolete in any way or shouldn't be used. Like, I've used it for years. I get it. If it's not broke, don't fix it. But when we're looking at the features between the two, and you're following the software version lifecycle management, as we're looking forward, RSthings Classic is getting older. FactoryTalk Links, starting in 6.2 and above, is where Control Flash Plus is supported. So when you do this, you really got to look at these added benefits. Are you trying to do the cross compatibility checks? Are you trying to do multi-device upware support? So I don't think there's any issue with staying with Control Flash in the meantime. But as you're moving forward with the version lifecycle management, I would recommend going to Control Flash Plus, just because you're getting all those added benefits and you're going to truly be able to enable the most up-to-date technology when using on your work system. So just for me personally, I would switch merely because of the cross compatibility checking. That one was one of my favorite things at tech support. It was just a lot of effort to do it. So why not just have the software do it? And as we're looking at the version lifecycle management too, at some point, RSthings Classic could be going away. So from a compatibility standpoint too, the newer software is just better supported with the latest and greatest versions of Logix, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can see if you're building new systems, jumping on the newest Control Flash Plus 5.0 would make sense. Now, according to your slide, it does seem like that last line, it does seem like there are some legacy devices that you're going to have that you'll always have to keep Control Flash around for, because it says it's supported devices. Control Flash Plus is CIP only.
Exactly.
So, yeah, so like we have to keep all the software around for all the devices. Control Flash will still be that legacy flashing product for the legacy products, I'm assuming.
Exactly. Yeah. So that tool isn't going to go completely obsolete, until everything goes away. But then again, we're still supporting PLC2. So
Shh, don't say PLC2.
I didn't wish
That's
them
a
to
cuss word.
No, I totally get it. But yeah, no, you are completely right. Non-SIP devices, unfortunately, are going to be, not necessarily unfortunately, but they're going to be around for a while. So we still need to support them. So this tool is not going to go anywhere. Just especially if you're using the latest and greatest, I would highly recommend going to Control Flash Plus.
Nice. Okay.
Okay, so some more exciting things. This is going to be hot off the presses for you guys. So let's take a look at FactoryTalk Action Manager. So this is hot off the presses. It was just released here on June 14th of 2022. So FactoryTalk Action Manager it allows you to schedule periodic updates for a controller wall clock. So this is pretty much replacing the wall clock time editor that was a tool once in the day. So as we all know, it's helpful to have controller wall clocks stay relatively close in time because over time, clocks can drift. Accuracy is different based on the controller type. Batteries can die and a power cycle could reset it back to default. Well, now all of that can be accounted for just by scheduling a synchronized clock update. So triggers are what will determine what action you're going to do. So for the date and time, do you want it to just be hours, months, a specific day and time? Do you want it to repeat until X day? But you can also schedule it to be based around things that are happening on your computer, like your IT schedules a Windows update for every 4 weeks. Have it aligned to that so that, anything that is unknown happening on your system, everything is updated to account for that. So following that, the actions are what are going to compensate for that controller clock drift. So the device wall clock update is integrated into FactoryTalk Link's networks browser and will support up to 1,000 controllers or actions. So this will even help with legacy PLC, not just the most modern technology. So it does go back all the way to PLC 5, as well as Slick and MicroLogix. So just for awareness purposes, this is ultimately going to replace the boot P tool as well when it comes to commissioning.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, oh yeah, I found that out very recently. So the initial support for this is it's going to be limited at first to 100 tasks, 100 triggers, 100 actions, and 1,000 devices. But to me, for a first release, that's enough. So, this is really exciting that you can do all of that right from here. But if you haven't gotten a chance to learn about this yet, like I said, it's brand new. Like I just learned about it very recently as well. I would recommend going out to YouTube. There's about like a 14-minute video on this. All you have to do is search FactoryTalk Action Manager, and it will be the first video that pops up. I learned so much from that video just watching that.
I think a lot of people will get their feet wet with this by doing the clock synchronization, but it looks like it could do so much more. And so it'll be interesting, folks. Like she said, check out the Rockwell YouTube video if you want to know more about this. And I can't wait to stop playing with this later in the year.
Oh yeah, I'm honestly hoping they have a demo of this at Automation Fair, so when all the folks come, they can see it live and get that true demo.
Nice.
Yeah, we also have another tool coming up here that I was not aware of has existed for 3 years already. So we have FactoryTalk Updater. So this is, like I said, something I honestly had no idea existed until very recently. So it's something that I am very excited to share. So whether it's troubleshooting a system, calling into tech support, or just trying to keep track of what you have at your company, we all, I'm sure, have run into a time where you need to check the software, what versions we have on our computer, as well as if we have the proper activations, and you're told you need it now, maybe yesterday. So traditionally, this wasn't necessarily the easiest. You could either go to your installed software if you had admin access, or you could go into C, program files x86, Rockwell software, and follow that rabbit hole down until you found the software that you were actually looking to see your revision on. So then now that you found your software revision, you have to go to Activation Manager to see if you have the available activations. Well, now with this, you can have all of that at a glance and see it all in one place. So now that you can do this in one place, but you can also see if your software is up to date with the latest in VLM. So, or if there's a patch available. But also if you can also connect directly to the PC/DC right from FactoryTalk Updater. So you find out something's out of date or you want to make sure it's at the latest and greatest. You can get the software you need more efficiently from one tool instead of having to hop around.
Yeah, I can definitely see if you're starting a new project, you don't want to have to go through and check, maybe you have 5 or 6 different applications. It can be real chore to check and see if everybody's up to date. So I can definitely see an advantage here. You can just pull this up and say, okay, everything's up to date, or no, I need to update these 2 applications before I start my project.
Absolutely. Yeah, like I wish I would have known about this sooner. I probably would have been using it back when I was in the training center, but here we are, and now I know it exists, and I can tell everyone about how wonderful it is. So from its initial release in May of 2019, this has already come a very long way. So in version 1, you had local computers and software inventory. Version 2, you add the ability to have networks as well as on-prem inventory. And now with the latest release, you have product notifications, you can script deployment, and you can even automate your patches. So this is making updating and making sure your whole system is up to date as seamless as possible. Now, obviously, how often you choose to update is up to you and your company policy. So like, don't feel like you have to get every single patch, but this will at least help you be aware of what the latest and greatest is, and you can make that educated choice if you want it to do it manually as well, just by going through the PCDC through FactoryTalk Updater. Especially when it comes to inventory and audits, I know the one question on everyone's mind is going to be what's supported. So I made sure to have this slide in here for those who can see it for that reason. But FactoryTalk Updater 3.0 focuses on the 4 main areas of our software: design, maintenance, operate, and services and tools. So this is a list of ever-growing support. So this would be something I would keep updated on if this is something that you would see beneficial for your system. So for those on the call, and Shawn, I know you'll probably put something in here too, but this is FactoryTalk Updater. And if you just do a quick Google search on that, it will have all of the supported softwares, but most of those are going to include your studios, your FactoryTalks, your RS Links, your Control Flash. So anything that falls under those categories, more than likely at some point, if not already, will fall under support within FactoryTalk Updater.
Yeah, for the audio only audience, it includes, it's not just Studio 5000, all of them, or all of the ones I know of, but also RS Logix 5, 500, and Micro, RS Links Classic. So some of the legacy products, and then all the new stuff we've been talking about, Logix Echo, but then even utilities like the BootP DHCP utility, and patch rollups, control flashes, and whatnot. So it seems like a very, you got VUSE, VUME, Vantage Point. So it seems like all of the big boys, all of the main software. I'm not seeing anything, no PLC2, thankfully, but I'm not seeing anything that that's missing. I'm sure there's something somebody will point out, but it looks like all the big ones that I would be worried about are on the list.
Absolutely. Now, I know you're going to be very, very sad with this last slide, but version 35 is a big release with a lot of different added benefits as a whole system. So Automation Fair is right around the corner, and I will be there, as well as many others from Rockwell who would be very excited to share this information with folks in person. So Shawn, I really appreciate you letting me take the time to talk about 35 and its Align release. Honestly, this has been a great experience, and I'm going to hand it back to you. Thank you so much.
Well, Kristen, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to not only put this presentation together, but to come on the show and give us all an update on V35. Very excited about it. We'll also be looking for news coming out of Automation Fair. Always very interested to see what's new coming out of there. I think we'll probably get some more information about hardware stuff that we kind of talked about briefly at the beginning. And but I really just thank you so much for coming on the show and giving us an update on V35.
Oh, of course. Bring me back anytime, Shawn.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode, and I want to thank Kristen for taking time out of her busy schedule to come on the show and bring us all up to speed on Studio 5000 version 35. Now, if you did enjoy this episode, please consider going over to theautomationblog.com/BOK1 and picking up a copy of my new ebook. It's a great way to support the show, especially when we put several hours into recording an episode and editing an episode like this that is not sponsored by the vendor. And most of the shows we do are not. So we really appreciate your support, whether you want to go to automation.locals.com or you want to pick up an ebook or maybe a mug or a t-shirt or something else. I just want to thank you all in advance for doing so and helping us keep this show going. I know a lot of companies are cutting back. We're seeing cutbacks in advertising. We're seeing cutbacks in the training departments buying training. So we really appreciate your support during these times because we really want to keep the podcast, the show, and the website going. So thank you very much in advance. And I just want to wish you all a very happy, safe, and healthy week. And until next time, my friends, peace.